On today's podcast, we're going to look at 4 organizational culture trends for 2025. Now, where do these come from? I'm looking at recent articles and studies and research from Forbes, from Fast Company, from Gallup, from WorkHuman, many different sources that are predicting the year ahead. And then I'm bringing my own observations and experience to the table to select 4 of the main trends that not only all these places are identifying, but in my language, what do I see kind of rising to the surface for the year ahead? Welcome back to the Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everyone, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat podcast wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today. Welcome in. So glad you are here. We are in season 9, over 265 or some episodes now. So glad you are back and welcome to anybody that's new to the podcast. I hope you'll go back, just Google my name, Jason Barger, and topics around leadership, culture, mindset, whatever that may be. And you're going to see 265 or so episodes around these kind of micropod topics and ideas that I'm sure hopefully will resonate with you. So also, anybody that's been with us from the very beginning of this podcast, welcome back. So glad that you are here and this continues to add value to your life and your work. My commitment to you, as always, is I want this to be a place that however you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to this, that it breathes a little good oxygen into you and helps you think about the temperature that you're hoping to set in your life and your work and helps you on whatever is next along your path. So thanks for being here today. Before we get started, if you'll do me the quick favor and do a couple things, subscribe if you haven't done so already, rate the podcast 5 stars on whatever platform that you're on. If you do that, that is super appreciative because that's the way the algorithms work. And also, if you leave a review in your own authentic words, what resonates with you, why are these messages important, any of that is really helpful to other people finding the podcast. And lastly, if you share it on social media, if you share episodes that resonate with you, or if you say, hey, let's listen to it as a team or throughout your organization or with colleagues, let's listen to this episode and then talk about it together. Those are ways in which these messages are amplified further in the world, and I appreciate everybody who takes a moment to do that, so thank you. I'm so grateful for all the listeners out there, and I want this to continue to be a spot that is, for you, your own leadership, the culture that you're trying to create, your own journey that you're on, for this to be a place for you to come and to not only think about things, but also to get some good information. And so one of the gifts, perhaps, that I can give you is the gift of some time back. And so I know not everyone out there has enough time to read all the wonderful articles and content that's out there in the world today talking about, how the work trends and the workforce is changing and things that are on the horizon, all that. Not everybody has the time to consume all that. And certainly I don't have all the time in the world to do that as well. But I also consume a lot of that content to research and to study and to bring myself up to speed on what are other trends that are happening across industries. And so I thought for today's podcast it'd be helpful to bring, take a lot of different articles and bring them down into what are 4 of the main things that are rising to the surface that I see with my eyes of trends that are emerging in the world of organizational cultures and work and the workforce. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. So I want to highlight some of the articles and their themes, but I want to provide my reflections and my observations on the content and trends in the world of developing leaders and cultures. So on today's podcast, we're going to look at 4 organizational culture trends for 2025. Now, where do these come from? I'm looking at recent articles and studies and research from Forbes, from Fast Company, from Gallup, from WorkHuman, many different sources that are predicting the year ahead. And then I'm bringing my own observations and experience to the table to select 4 of the main trends that not only all these places are identifying, but in my language, what do I see kind of rising to the surface for the year ahead? But before we dive into today's topic, let's pause, take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Many teams and organizations right now are realizing that they need to do both. They need to engage the minds and hearts of their people in person, where everyone in the room can experience the energy of congregating together and find clarity for the road ahead. And they also need to continue to find ways to engage the minds and hearts of their people virtually, with those who are working remotely or at a distance. So, if you are in the process of planning your next team meeting, company all-hands event, conference, or culture summit, and are looking for support with a powerful keynote speech, facilitated team conversations that are the currency for change, or deeper development on leadership mindset and an intentional strategy for the culture you're trying to create, I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. I hope you'll contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. It is my privilege and our honor to partner with great people to provide support in these areas. We want to breathe oxygen into your leaders and throughout your organization so you can set the temperature you want for your culture. We look forward to connecting with you soon. So we're talking about the 4 organizational culture trends for 2025. Again, predictions from places like Forbes, Fast Company, Gallup, WorkHuman, all these different places and resources, McKinsey, others. And looking at all this data and research and support, and then I'm bringing my own observations and reflections and predictions for the year ahead, but trying to serve you, the listener, with a shortened and maybe more personal list of what are some of those trends that seem to be rising to the surface over the next year and beyond. And so here are the 4 that I'm going to focus on today. 1, all the research and study is pointing to each of these 4, by the way. But 1 is culture is your intentional heartbeat. I'll talk about that in a second. Culture is your intentional heartbeat. 2, remote work negotiations continue. Remote work negotiations continue. The 3rd is developing the mature leader for trust and resilience. And 4, upskilling emotional intelligence in humans while discerning artificial intelligence efficiencies. Those are the 4 trends that I'm gonna focus on here in just a second. That's coming from study and research again across all these places. So, of the roughly 20 or so workplace and culture trends that have been identified by Gallup, Forbes, Fast Company, and others, these are the 4 that again rose to the top of my list based on my experience, my observations, intuition, and then also the ones that were on all the lists. So, let's share a little bit about each of these 4 organizational culture trends in 2025. The first one being culture is your intentional heartbeat. If there is one constant in all these lists around organizational trends in the world today, it is that culture is at the center of all performance. How places do what they do is what defines how good they are at it and whether they get to keep doing it. And as Forbes puts it, if one thing distinguishes companies that consistently achieve the best results over time, it is their culture. According to a study published by Deloitte, companies with inclusive, supportive cultures are 22% more profitable and 27% greater capacity to lead change. So, again, in all of these lists and in everything, what rose to the surface first and foremost is your culture is your intentional heartbeat. Plus, as you dive deeper into the research of what's happening across the workforce and organizations right now, the numbers also tell a stark story. Only 43% of them, or not only, but 43% of employees feel burned out. 43% of employees feel burned out, and with 37% so overwhelmed it impacts their ability to work effectively. And as WorkHuman stated in response to the latest Gallup workplace studies, they say it starts by investing in people. Investing in people, the beating heart of any successful organization is its people and its culture. As Fast Company declares, periodic offsites and team-building retreats could become essential ingredients to creating culture where the Zoom square fails. And so they're saying add a line item in the department budget for travel, because the importance of bringing people together and keeping that heartbeat of culture it continues to show up in all these places. What I'll say is the best teams and organizations will continue to devote time and energy and resources into helping keep the human touch alive in their organization and help their people raise the level of connection and intentional culture-shaping strategies, whether how we hire, how we onboard, how we do identify and develop emerging leaders, the ongoing development and strategy with our senior leadership team, how are we developing managers, how do we do performance evaluation, all of those things, intentional culture strategies in alignment with their mission. That's the number one trend that rises to the surface, is that culture is your intentional heartbeat. Number two, remote, and these aren't in an order other than I would say the culture one is the one that glaringly jumps out in everything, but these aren't in an order other than these are the top four that kind of rose to the surface. Remote work negotiations continue. Remote work negotiations continue. Global trends and feedback continue to show that employees value some range of flexibility or remote element to their work. Organizations that are being too strict with even considering possibilities of remote work, they're reporting what they call a talent tax, which means they're losing people. And many studies are showing it isn't hurting performance, those organizations that are adopting some form of remote work, but it actually can enhance it. However, every single different organization is still negotiating this, because every organization is different of what, and they're finding what is the right rhythm for their particular organization. What roles can have remote elements and how much is the right amount without losing the undeniable impact of person-to-person and human interaction. And then, to quote, a McKinsey study highlights that companies that successfully balance flexibility and structure see significant improvements in terms of employee productivity and satisfaction. So hybrid work offers the advantage of, obviously, of a more flexible work environment while also posing some unique challenges, we know. And in terms of advantages, hybrid workers have higher engagement, better overall well-being, and lower turnover risk than fully on-site workers who are remote capable, which is, good for business too. Leaders and managers tend to recognize these benefits and report that, they're able to recognize when either their in-person people or the remote people are feeling that sense of burnout. And then engaging with them has helped to improve retention, and it's also helped to expand their talent pool throughout their organization. And at the same time, we know that working apart more often than on different schedules also, we know, creates obstacles. So any organization, as they're negotiating the strategy around remote work, they need to thoughtfully create and fully commit to a strategy for how we're going to best communicate, how are we going to best collaborate, how are we going to build relationships, and how do we continue to solidify our work culture, as we move forward. Not every place is or has done this well. Expectations in many places still aren't clear, and many in places aren't being communicated well. And so good dialogue on what does success look like is critical. And I'll just share my observation is that places are losing sight of the important rhythm and cadence for that engaging in person their people. So finding that authentic cadence within your organization that will be new to you, but what is that rhythm of when we're remote and when we're in person? And I would just point out that it's art, it's not science. And when led effectively, it can be, great for many people in many industries, but there is no one-size-fits-all solution for this, unfortunately. The best places are finding that rhythm. So the third thing the trend for organizational cultures in 2025 I'll talk about is developing the mature leader for trust and resilience. Developing the mature leader for trust and resilience. We're not very far from removed from the February 2024 Gallup report that told us that only 23% of U.S. employees strongly agree that they trust the leadership of their organization. Only 23% trust the leadership of their organization, and only 20% say that they feel connected to their organizational culture. And yet 90% of them say that's exactly what I want. I want to feel connected and I want to trust my leader. So to not only survive in what Fast Company refers to this era, this era that we're in right now, which they predict actually is going to last for at least another decade at least, but they're calling this era the We the People era, which they're referencing the old leadership models of top-down autocratic kind of leaders in organizations that just bark out orders and tell people what to do has been dethroned, and people want buy-in. They want trust. They want to feel connected to the culture. So not only the mature leader will be developing this kind of trust with their people, but also developing a sense of resiliency. And that resiliency, as we learn to develop an ability to withstand strong pressures and still pull together to make positive impacts, that will be critical. The best organizations will be hiring for resiliency, developing resiliency, and rewarding it, and ensuring an organization is protected from whatever the threat is around the corner. And again, that could mean a whole lot of different things, that there's going to be all kinds of things that doom and gloom that's always on the horizon of things that could happen. But whether that's cyber attacks or economic downturns or environmental events or war or pandemics or all of those things that disrupt our normal cadence, building resiliency of how do we deal with challenges and lead through change is going to be as critical as ever in the coming years, and all these sources seem to be identifying that. What I'll say is that resiliency will be an attribute of leadership and culture development that will be needed, and is an opportunity to strengthen your people and culture from within. And just being able to proactively help people find healthy and positive ways of how they strengthen their mindset, their body, their relationship with the people around them and their work will also help their performance. So developing that kind of mature leader for trust and resilience is going to be one of those trends that, and by trend, that seems short term, but I think something, of course, that has always been true and will be true into the future. And then the fourth one that I'll highlight for today, coming out of all this study and research, is that upskilling emotional intelligence in humans while discerning artificial intelligence efficiencies. Upskilling emotional intelligence in humans while discerning AI efficiencies. As you know, it's been said here by Forbes, a high emotional intelligence and emotionally maturity will also be a marker for success in leadership and the future of work. Companies may increase investments in interpersonal training for their teams. There are now 5 generations sharing office space. And so the latest, what they're calling Gen Alpha, first born in 2010, is not far behind. So the vastly divergent communication styles, comfort level with technology, and values are already creating clashes between these different generations. And so upskilling humans to be more emotionally intelligent of how we work together, collaborate with each other, and so providing intentional development opportunities for employees to upskill their abilities to have more courageous conversations, understand their own emotional intelligence for themselves, personal awareness of themselves, social awareness of the people around them, to build trust with their teammates and what is the dynamic of how they do that in many different layers and forms, develop a greater strength for resilience and positive accountability, and finding a work-life rhythm rather than that typical talk around balance that doesn't typically exist, but finding a rhythm around this work life will be key to helping humans maximize what we do best so that we can leverage AI to assist us in more efficient and effective ways. Because, as Forbes reports, AI is transforming leadership and business management by automating repetitive tasks and improving operational efficiencies. Leaders can make use of these tools to not only optimize processes and projects, but also make faster, more informed decisions. And according to a report by Gartner, by 2025, more than 50% of key business decisions will be supported on AI-powered data analysis. And as data from ADP shows, 87% of executives anticipate that roles in their company will be augmented, not replaced, but augmented by generative AI. The rise of AI calls for a balanced and sensible strategy that enhances rather than replaces human capabilities. So, fancy way of saying we need to be upskilling emotional intelligence in our people so that we can be smarter and better about handling the things that humans can in the interaction of humans. And we need to then be discerning what are those AI supportive things that augment our jobs and help make us more efficient and effective. So all of these things are happening across all organizations, and the opportunity we all have is to step back and say, okay, well, how are we making culture our intentional heartbeat? And what does our remote work negotiations look like to maximize our efficiencies and our people? How do we develop the mature leader for trust and resilience within our organization? And how are we upskilling emotional intelligence in our humans, in our people throughout our organization, while we begin to discern how do we help augment and support roles with AI that help us become more efficient and effective? So the best organizations will have strategies and commitments and intentionality. They won't have it perfect. They won't get it perfect, but they'll have strategies to be able to say, how are we approaching these things and what are we intentionally doing for this? My own personal and last observation I'll make for today is that culture is the heartbeat. It's not an add-on. And if you don't have a strategy or you aren't intentionally engaging the minds and hearts of your people in creating the culture and bringing them into participation, then what ends up happening is we start to become decentralized and we start to become fragmented. And organizations, and what the research is showing is people go other places and they begin to feel like they aren't valued. And oh, by the way, they may buy into that just, or the reality of maybe I'm more important somewhere else. So I hope today's, the opportunity is that what we're talking about is to proactively help identify and create that cultural heartbeat and to negotiate that work, remote work and in-person work mentality, to develop the mature leader for trust and resilience and upskill that emotional intelligence. And in doing so, we drive engagement, trust, and all of that forward by all of our efforts. And so the future is bright for all organizations that are thinking this way and are putting this as a priority as they move forward. And I hope this has been helpful for you today. So I hope today's episode got you thinking in some good ways and hopefully breathed a little oxygen into you, hopefully confirming and affirming some great things that you already have in place and are already working on, but also might be a nudge to say, what are we doing? And are we being even more intentional and strategic about that in the future? If I and we can be helpful to you in any way, I hope you'll track us down, info@jasonvbarger.com, or go to just jasonvbarger.com and share your thoughts with us, and we'll try to continue to support you and think about how to help as you develop people and culture on the road ahead. Lastly, I'll just remind you that there's so many great episodes out there. If this one resonated with you, there's many others, so go back and listen to those. Just type in Jason Barger and any topic you're looking for, and chances are you might find something that resonates with you and is helpful on the next step along your journey. We'll put some of the resources in the show notes from today. And the last thing I'll just say is cheers to you. Cheers on the road ahead for developing the people and the culture that you hope for. We have an opportunity to get clear on the temperature that we're trying to set. And then with courage and commitment to try to breathe oxygen into each other and throughout our organization in intentional ways so that we can shape that future that we want. So thanks for being here today. I hope this has resonated with you. And I'll just remind you lastly to step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.